All right.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Welcome, everyone, to Mavs Sports Take, Episode 9. Can you believe we've already been on Episode 9 of Mavs Sports Take? Whether you're joining us from the 8th time or the first time, thank you for tuning in. Last week, David and I brought you an interview with former Notre Dame star and San Francisco 49er defensive lineman Ian Williams. Today, we're excited for our first all-woman panel. We have some amazing women joining us on the Mavs Sports Take today. Ms. Catherine Raîche from the Philadelphia Eagles, Jennifer Lee Chan from the 49ers, insider for the Comcast Sports Bay Area, Ms. Grace DeWitt from Douglas Digital, and Jill McBride Baxter, sports agent, attorney, author, and podcast host of Representation Without Taxation. Of course, I am Mr. Ryan Roberts here with my good friend David Turner. David, we have an exciting panel. We're talking football again. It's obviously it's a multi-day-a-week occurrence for us now, man. How are we doing tonight? How excited are we for this panel we got today?
Oh, we're pumped to have these ladies come on and grace us with their presence and give our audience a listen to what their careers are like, what their lives are like, what their take is on the social standings of everything today, the pandemic. I just can't wait to get to talking to them about all this stuff, and it'll just be a few minutes away.
Absolutely. We want to get into a couple recaps from last week, starting in the NCAA games, college football games. Georgia, Auburn. I think when me and David spoke about this last week, we both thought it was going to be a really close, hard-fought game with two defensive football teams. A lot of really nice players on the Georgia side defensively specifically. It was a shellacking by Georgia. They won 27-6. Stetson Bennett, their quarterback, who was his first career start, had a really nice game. Georgia showed a lot more offensively than we saw in the opener, and they were able to take down Auburn. Bo Nix, quarterback from Auburn, had a lot of struggles during the day, to say the least. David, obviously it was not quite like what we predicted, but it looks like the Georgia Bulldogs might be a little bit for real, taking down a pretty solid Auburn team this past week.
Yeah, what was really interesting to me was the struggles Nix had. I didn't think the young defense, like we talked about last week, was going to give them that much trouble. But God bless the Georgia Dogs. They came in and they defended the hedges, and it was great. It was a great game, hard-fought game. It was hard to see Auburn struggle like that, but it was really nice to see Georgia because the first week they didn't look too good. Now they look like the Georgia team we're used to seeing. Hard-fought game for them, and they really closed it out. They didn't take they didn't step off the neck. They could have lightened up a little bit, but to only give up 6 points to Auburn, that was just impressive. Very, very impressive outing for Georgia with Bulldogs last week.
Yeah, and it was really fun to watch because I expected Georgia to give Auburn a lot of troubles with the defense. They have Eric Stokes, Richard LeCount, all those dudes on defense, Aziz Ojulari, Monty Rice. A lot of excellent future NFL players on that defense for Georgia. Expected a low-scoring affair for Auburn, but I must say I did not expect the outburst from Georgia. So it was a lot of fun to watch. Looks like UGA might be for real. We're looking for contenders in the SEC outside of Alabama's of the world. So LSU being down. So maybe Georgia's that team with a young quarterback that has enough that they can continue the success they're having. Another game we wanted to check up on, Kansas State against Texas Tech. We predicted a shootout. We got a shootout to a degree. We did not predict the right outcome. We both predicted Texas Tech to get the victory. Kansas State eventually winning 34-31, even with Kansas State's quarterback Skylar Thompson getting knocked out of the game early. I think Texas Tech's quarterback Alan Bowman was actually knocked out of the game early as well, too. So some injuries on both sides from the quarterback position. We saw a relatively high-scoring affair, but David, it looks like Kansas State 2 weeks in a row playing some pretty good football after their rough home opener against Arkansas State to start the year.
Yeah, I was surprised here. I didn't think Kansas State was going to have the horses to stay with Texas Tech. I thought Texas Tech was going to be able to run up and down the field and score at will almost and run the points up. And when the quarterback got knocked out early for K-State, I was like, uh-oh, here we go. But that defense, man, they showed something. They showed a lot of fortitude there to hold Texas Tech to just 31 points. And I know it's 31 points, but still in the Big Ten, that's a light day. They can score up to 49, 50 points. So for K-State, they're showing something. Like you said, they had the rough first outing, against lesser competition, but the last 2 weeks against superior competition or competition people didn't give them credit to be able to stick with, man, they have come back and they have fought hard and they've won 2 really, really good games. So hats off to that coaching staff for having these kids ready to play. Hats off to the players for stepping up and making themselves a contender in the Big Ten.
Absolutely, and big shout out to Chris Kleiman. We talked about him a little bit, the former North Dakota State head coach, now over at Kansas State, doing some really nice stuff. It is not an easy job to take over for a legend and a guy like Coach Snyder, but doing a really nice job, it seems, so far. So we want to move over to the NFL games before we bring our panel on here. A couple games we want to talk a little bit about. Buffalo Bills, 30-23 defeat over the Las Vegas Raiders, 30-23. That game was never really that close, to be honest. Bills, I felt like from start to finish, at least from my perspective, that game was pretty much in hand. Even when it was a one-score affair, I was just kind of like, I don't think that this game is going to change in any way. I didn't feel like the momentum was going to be shifted. I thought it was, it was what it was, right? Like the Bills outclassed the Raiders, in my opinion. Josh Allen, man, he has me eating my words for my scouting report when he came out of Wyoming, because that dude is playing absolutely incredible. So big shout outs, obviously, to the Buffalo Bills. David, what were some of your takeaways overall from this Bills defeat over your lineage in the Raiders?
I was with you. I didn't think the Bills had much of a they took control early, and they didn't you never felt like they were going to lose control. So, for me, I was just like, this is great. I picked the Bills to win. I know my lineage is the Raiders. Those are my guys over there. But same point, we gotta pick the right ones. So for me, I was just like, it was great to see Josh Allen because, that was a quarterback I did when I was at the Panthers. I saw him in college and bringing him in to the man, and to see him mature like this and that team. I mean, come on, Beaner and the coach Sean. I mean, they got that team gelling. They got them really fighting for each other. You see them having fun on the sidelines and with their teammates. So I'm very happy to see what they're doing there in Buffalo, and it doesn't hurt that my cousin's a Buffalo Bills fan, so it makes him smile a little bit too.
Absolutely, and big shout out again. I feel like I'm shouting out coaches so far, but Coach Sean McDermott for the Bills doing an exceptional job. Top 5 coach in the league right now, maybe, right? Like he's doing an outstanding job. And for being a guy that lives right outside of Philly, at one point he was a defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he basically got ran out of the building. It was not pretty. They did not treat Coach McDermott, not give him much of a leash. Wasn't great in his Eagles tenure, but he has proven everybody wrong, obviously, after leaving Philadelphia. So he's been doing an incredible job. Last game that we want to cover from this past weekend before we bring on the panel, Cleveland Browns, Dallas Cowboys. Me and David talked a little bit about this one about an hour ago. The 49-38 defeats by the Cleveland Browns against the Dallas Cowboys, where David knows the exact number, but Cleveland Browns ran the ball pretty well against the Dallas Cowboys. It was pretty ugly. David, again, takeaways from this game, man. I wasn't expecting it. I really was kind of Dallas Cowboys are going to win this week. I was really kind of on that wave a little bit, but I'm coming down to reality a little bit, I guess, on how bad things are right now for the Dallas Cowboys.
And like if you roll back the tape, we talked about if the Cleveland Browns were going to win the game, they were going to have to win it on the running game. They were going to have to run the ball, and they did. They ran for 306 or 309 yards on these guys. Even when Chubb got hurt early in the game, I mean, everybody else just went off. I mean, this was just such a bad performance by the Dallas Cowboys defense. So, it was great to see Cleveland having fun out there, running, reverses and all this sort of kind of stuff, fun stuff. Jarvis Landry's throwing touchdowns to Odell and everything. So they are just riddled with injuries. They have almost an entire defense on IR. So for them, it's tough to see them going through these tough times. But again, as a Giants guy, it's not that tough for me.
I'm sure it's not. Obviously, Odell Beckham looked pretty darn good. People have been kind of casting him aside recently, but had a really nice game against the Dallas Cowboys. And again, that 49-38 victory for the Cleveland Browns. We want to bring in our panel now. We're ready to go. Mavs Sports Take is proud to welcome our 4 women who have carved out 4 distinct careers in the sports world. Introducing to you first, we have Miss Catherine Raîche, football operations coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles, Montreal native and graduate of Sherbrooke University in Canada. She has served as assistant general manager for the Montreal Alouettes for the CFL, and also as the director of football administration for the CFL, for the XFL's Tampa Bay organization. Catherine, and excited to have you on. I know we're both pumped about it. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And second on the panel, going to rattle them off here, and then we're going to get right into the questions. We have Miss Jennifer Lee Chan, who is a 49ers insider for NBC Sports Bay Area. She's a proud USC alumni, a former professional wrestler and beat writer in the San Francisco Bay Area. Jennifer, I likewise there. Appreciate you coming on with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Next, we have Miss Grace DeWitt, founder of Douglas Digital. Grace started her business after working for the New Orleans Saints and New Orleans Pelicans. She helped the Saints' social media presence move into top 10 in the NFL. Another proud USC alumni. We got a lot of USC people in the building tonight. Grace also worked on the Trojans' social media staff. Grace, appreciate you coming on. It's our first time with we have the email chains going every once in a while, but it's first time face-to-face. How are you?
Hi, good. I know. I make my appearance.
Absolutely. And we're pumped to have you on. And last but not least, we welcome Jill McBride Baxter. Jill was born into a football family as her father is a Hall of Fame coach, Ron McBride. Jill is a graduate of the University of Utah and the University of the Pacific McGeorge School of Law. She has been in the business since 1987 as a sports agent and contract negotiator. Jill is an author, podcast host, mother of 2 daughters, and wife of a football coach, on top of representing athletes, coaches, and front office staff. So Jill does it all, does a little bit of everything. Jill, we appreciate you also coming on with us today, and just so excited to dig into a little bit of your career as well.
Well, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Well, hi, everybody. I appreciate you guys coming on and joining us on the 9th, and the first time we've had a panel this big, so we're hitting a lot of milestones here tonight. First ladies guest. First big panel, four ladies on to talk about this. So I'm just going to jump right into the questions, if that's okay. The first one's a group question for all of you to answer in whatever order you guys see fit. But it's, how has the pandemic impacted your job? We hear how it's impacted the coaches, the players, people like myself. But how has it impacted each one of you since it's broken out?
I can get contact with players like we normally do. After practice, we generally go into locker rooms. After games, we're in the locker rooms talking to players, getting that one-on-one connection, building relationships, kind of learning and feeling what the team is like throughout wins and losses, and we just aren't getting that this season. So it's been a challenge. The PR departments have given us interviews on camera, so we're doing it through Zoom just like this, but that interpersonal connection that you get, building relationships, has been much more challenging this season.
I was going to say that for me, one of my clients is a college football trophy, and our watch list has probably changed 8 times. I just got an email earlier today about someone brand new that's being added to the list because we've had to evolve the list as, number 1, players have opted out, 2, conferences have been put on hold, and then back in play and back on hold, and who even played this week. So that's been a challenge to try and create a content calendar around a shifting watch list.
Sounds like a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
What about for you, Catherine? What are we seeing in the NFL level? What are we seeing the challenges coming to the scouting departments?
Yeah, it's definitely different. Just when you think in terms of who we have in the building, the number of people are extremely limited. Everything from the way we have our meals or the way we travel or the way we work out players in-house has changed. So we definitely have to adjust. I mean, we've been tested every day since mid-July. So it's definitely been a process, but our organization has been great. And I'm just glad we get to play football games. So it's been good.
Now, Jill, as representing the players, what's your side? How's the pandemic impacted you?
Well, I think the biggest change for me is that, like, normally during like preseason games, which we didn't have, I would have gone to my client's game, at least one of them. And then also I'm usually at a college game every Saturday. And so not doing that. But actually what's impacted me also is the creek fire, because we got evacuated for 4 weeks. So I've had the pandemic and the fire. So I'm like, okay, whatever. Got to go with the flow.
Yeah, I know you've had it rough out there in California with all that. And as Catherine had said, with the workouts, how they're adjusting workouts, that's also had to impact your clients, right? With being able to obtain workouts at this time and juncture. Yes.
I mean, I'm going to tell you that I think fewer players are getting worked out. And I think, and I think they're working out guys that are closer to their facility just because of the testing. So, depend on where you're geographically located. If you're a guy who either got cut or was in the XFL and looking for an opportunity, the workouts have been quite different.
And Catherine, you're seeing that too?
Yeah, maybe to piggyback on this, like I feel like one of the group that this has impacted the most are the undrafted free agent of the 2020 draft class, because with no preseason, they don't get to have much tape, to be honest with you, to go off. So when those guys are being cut from practice rosters or didn't make the roster at all when it was cut down day, it's hard for other teams to want to take a shot or bring them in, because all they have to go off is their college tape, where they graded after their season. So I feel like these guys didn't have the chance to put some tape together. So that's definitely impacted them in their chances of securing a job moving forward.
Yeah, as a former pro scout, that would be very hard for me to evaluate and put my name on a guy that I didn't see in preseason. And that, I usually, like Jill, would go out to college games. I'd be at all the preseason games, grading players and grading that tape, getting it ready for cutdown day. Without that now to evaluate, that's got to be very difficult. Coming right back at you, Catherine.
A lot of these guys didn't even have pro days. When you think about it, it goes all the way back to pro days being canceled. So even the numbers you have on these guys are not, for some of them, you don't have any. So.
Well, if that's the case, I'm working at ANC too as their director of personnel. So I'm timing, I'm going out and doing stuff. We're going to have fall camps too for guys to come to. So if there's ever guys you need times on, just let me know and I can help you out and get them to a camp and get their measurements and get them verified for you. But here we go, Catherine. Here's another question for you. Pro football teams seem to be interested in hiring women for roles much like you're in at this time at all-time high right now. It's creating the interest of initial hurdles and stuff. What is it? What's a hurdle that you think women often get stuck on that they need to get over for the similar role?
I feel, as you mentioned, I feel like it's been trending in the right direction. I think not just the NFL, like multiple leagues and in sports are hiring more women. I think, to me, it's great to hire more women. And when you think about it, for all these years, they were looking at only 50% of the pool to fill those jobs. So now that they're open to looking at 100% of the pool and really find the most competent candidate, regardless of gender, race, or whatever other the potential discrimination criteria, I would say that the next step is making sure these same women get higher positions. Because if you just look across the league, and it's not just in scouting, if you look at athletic trainers or nutrition, like, you don't see a lot of women in executive decision-making positions on the football side. So I think more and more it'd be great to keep helping the women and having them ascend through higher ranks within the organization.
And that's interesting because, I was at the Raiders for 5 years where Amy Trask was our president and really in control a lot of what's going on in football. So I was in an organization where Al Davis believed in, just hire the best person to do the job. And now to see the rest of the league kind of where that Maverick was, he was out front running or he was. Now they're catching up to him, even though he's passed on and gone. So, Ryan, you got the next one?
Yeah, and Jennifer, I wanted to ask specifically about the sports journalism industry, because I know obviously there are a lot of challenges that you spoke about in the beginning, but specifically for what you do on a week-to-week basis, what is the state of the current world to work in sports journalism, and how are you kind of navigating everything that's going on, and kind of inversely has kind of a more of a familiarity of how it might go scheduling wise on a week-to-week basis? Has that helped you at all kind of bringing some type of normalcy to this situation?
I mean, just being back covering football makes me so much happier. So that's a good thing. But the challenges overall as a female in the industry is you have to prove yourself more than I think you do as a male. Whether, it's not whether it's fair or not, it's just part of the deal. You have to prove that you have some football knowledge, that you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about. And the problem if you're starting now is that you don't have those relationships with the players, so they don't know you. So your first interaction with a guy may just be via Zoom, you're asking him a question, and you haven't built that relationship with him. So he doesn't know where you're coming from, what kind of knowledge you have, if you've been around the team for 5, 6, 7 years, or if this is your first season. So you really have to work on presenting yourself in the most professional way. You have to have good questions. You have to pay attention and listen to what's going on. I think it's harder to prove yourself and your abilities in the climate that we're in now, which is unfortunate, but it's a challenge that we have to take on.
Absolutely. And I know me and David talked about this a little bit, in the scouting industry specifically, like the relationships that you have with the schools and the ability to talk to coaches, like that has really kind of helped people and urged people along. It sounds like similarly for you, those relationships that you've built have really kind of guided the success that you've been able to maintain through everything going on now. And sorry, moving on to the next one.
It really does. You build those relationships with players, Oh yeah.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You didn't hear.
It's a little delayed on my end.
No worries. Yeah, it's just the relationships that you build through working and being there in person. It's just hard not to have those this year with not being in person with players.
Absolutely. And Jill, I wanted to move over to you because we're talking about a lot.
Yeah, when you're not somewhere and shaking hands and looking them up there, it's hard to not have that relationship,
All right. I apologize to the panel. It looks like I'm a little delayed here. I'm going to try to get the next one in. Jill, I know you haven't only represented pro football players. We've been talking about a lot from the pro football perspective. Who else have you represented in sports, and what have those experiences been like for you overall in the industry?
Oh, well, I've represented a whole lot of different people. I mean, athletic directors, coaches, assistant coaches, media, UFC fighters, NFL players. I've even represented presidents of universities. So all of them are very different, and they're different because, when you're negotiating a deal for an athletics director, you're dealing with the general counsel usually at the university. If I'm advisor, which could be the head coach or could be the AD or a combination of all those things and the general counsel. My UFC fighter, I was dealing more with whoever the matchmaker was, and then the general counsel for the UFC, and then did a lot of traveling, and that was a lot of endorsements. And so it was constant. It was every 3 months. Coaches, again, a lot of it has to do with the contract and the words in the contract, whereas a player contract is not as word generated because all the words have been agreed to. So it's more monetary, what the monetary amount is. And then also coaches and athletics director, you got to really study the market and see what everybody's worth, depending on how many years they've been in, where, if they're being recruited away from somewhere else. So it's they're all different in different ways, but players are a different process, obviously, than coaches, ADs, and then UFC fighters are just a whole nother nother can of worms. And then I represent some Olympic athletes, and that's a lot of endorsements. So there's just been lots of different things that have happened along the way. So
a lot of different areas, a lot of things to get familiar with. I'm sure it's kind of a overload a little bit, just kind of getting through everything and all the information that you need to kind of process a little bit.
And media too. I mean, just because I've negotiated so many deals, so much of it is the wording in the contract. I mean, it's a lot of the wording in the contract, in my opinion, is not favorable to the employee and is completely in favor of the employer. So that's always a challenge.
And I know, Grace, that you work with a lot of sorts of sports personalities, players, to agents, to scouts. For you, what challenges do you find common amongst your clients in the current environment that we're living in?
Sure. Well, I mean, this is a persistent problem now and even in pre-COVID and post-COVID, because hopefully that's coming around the corner times, is helping people to understand that, number one, social media is not like this frivolous thing, right? I mean, I hope that at this point we all see every day how powerful and consequential it is in outside of sports, and it's certainly just as consequential inside of sports and marketing. And that being said, that social media is not like the end all be all of a marketing effort or campaign. It's just one spoke on the wheel. So a lot of the time, someone comes to me and says, hey, I need social media help. And it's like, yeah, well, actually you need marketing help. We're gonna help your social media, but let's talk about what's happening on your website. What about your email marketing? So thinking of it in that kind of context is often a level of education I have to provide. And also, I guess with players and coaches in particular, coaches often remark that social media is like a distraction, right? And yet, especially in the college context, the coaching staff is using their social media to be in touch with prospects all the time. So like, it's, where do you draw the line between distraction? You can't just write it off, I guess is my point. And then with the athletes themselves, I think a lot of the time they don't realize how much money they're leaving on the table now and in their future by not making their social media presence a priority. And that's everything from making it a priority in terms of how a team views you as a draft prospect or as a free agent, to the endorsement deals and sponsorship opportunities that are available to you. And then also, like, ultimately football comes to an end, right? So you have to think about the fact that you can turn your 150,000 followers as a retired player into like your next business opportunity. But you want to start working on that now. So those are all recurring challenges.
Well, let me ask you guys this really quick question. So as a group, if you can each take this one, how can men in sports better serve to be your allies and be, to their female colleagues? What is something we can do and take away from this conversation as men and say, you know what? They need us to do this. They would like us to do that. What can we do? How can we be your allies?
For me personally, this is Jill. It's just referring clients. I think a lot of scouts like refer clients to players. Like they go around and they might talk to a player and they'll say, hey, who's a good agent? And I'm going to be honest with you, I've gotten most of my business through referrals. So I think for me, it's referrals. And then, guys have always been really pretty good to me about returning my phone calls. So that hasn't really been a big issue, but just returning phone calls and referrals, really. But I don't know how you treat the guys. So maybe you can tell
again,
me.
I refer clients to you, so you know that. I already do that. So
I know you do, David. So I don't know.
You already know I do that. So
I know. So I don't know what to say on that. So I guess that's really, I've always since I've been in the industry my whole life, my relationships are pretty well established for a long period of time. So it's a little bit different because I'm a coach's kid and a coach's wife and a sports attorney. So I've been around it a long time, which helps. I don't know what a person would do if they're just getting into it right now. That would be a lot harder.
I think part of it is being inclusive. So when you have a group of guys getting together to discuss anything, offer that to the females that are around as well. I think inclusion is part of, what keeps a lot of women out of the industry, out of the business, not knowing how to get in. So if you're faced with someone who has interest, then offer suggestions. If you're working alongside of someone who is in it or is just starting, gently critique, offer advice, give suggestions, because I think all of that is so worthwhile. But inclusion is really the important thing. And I think I personally have been very lucky. The 49ers beat is a lot of men and women, primarily men, of course, because just the industry we're in. But everybody has been so open and friendly. And I remember being on there the first week and people are like, oh no, it's over here, oh no, it's over there. So it was just a bunch of helpful people. Just treat people how you want to be treated, and really that's going to help everybody out.
If I may piggyback off that, I think my bit of advice, so treat people the way you want to be treated. I find increasingly that men in and out of sports are like afraid of doing something wrong, or like faced with some sort of accusation or whatever. And like, my whole thing is, I think we all know what it is to treat someone and be treated with respect. So as long as you do that, I don't think you'll run into many issues. It's like the moment you stop being respectful, generally there's a problem in any context, but especially in sports. So I know there's probably like well-meaning men in football clubs across the country who are worried about getting into trouble. And yeah, my short answer to them would just be female colleagues.
And I think for me, I would add, I think, David, you used the right word in your question by ally. And I think that's where it starts in terms of being open to act as mentors. I mean, here at the Eagles, we have an open door policy. I mean, I can go and talk to any coaches, to our general manager at any time and ask questions and they will always help. So I think part of that support is key. And also as a person in with decision-making power, I would say to be open, to think outside the box and embrace diversity and having people from different backgrounds as part of your staff, because I think as a whole, it's going to make you better to begin with, just because if we're all in a room and we all look the same, we may all think the same. But when you bring diversity, I think it makes the club better in their decision making. So hopefully having that open mind and being open to be mentors for women coming up in the industry.
Oh, look at those answers. I mean, I knew I got the right panel together. This was really impressive. I do want to open it up to see if you guys have any advice for the young ladies coming up behind you on what they should do, because tonight I've heard from Jill and Grace and Jen, everybody pretty much saying that the relationship building is so hard, and right now it'd be hard to do it with the pandemic and where we're at in society. What advice or one piece of advice would you guys give to the next young lady coming up behind you?
In journalism, it's creating your own content. You just have to find creative ways to put it out there. You have to build your audience. The thing about social media, we've talked about it, is once you build your audience, that's part of your bargaining chip. When you're hired as a sports journalist or anything in media, when you're hired, you can say, yes, you're getting me, but you're also getting my 25,000 followers. So it's part of what makes you attractive as a hire. So any way you can get your content out there, be creative with it, always be ready, be prepared, and you just never know when you're going to be able to jump on an opportunity. For instance, I randomly took a picture of the sidelines during a 49ers game, making fun of the sideline preparation, saying that it wasn't Jeff Fisher prepared, and it just happened to be the one picture that Colin Kaepernick is sitting in. So just be ready. You never know what's going to be thrown your way. Be prepared as much as possible, and that's really all you can do.
Well, I'll just say really quickly, I think, at least in my industry, men and women, you kind of need a mentor, because there's so many mistakes that you can make that can really cost you a lot of money. And I actually ended up creating a sports agent academy for people that it's like an online course, so I can mentor them, because honestly, I might get 2 or 3 emails a day, somebody wanting to mentor, they want me to mentor them, but I don't have the time to do it like 24/7. I have to work. But I think you really do need some guidance, because there's huge mistakes that you can make, and then also introducing you to people. So in my industry, you really got to go to the AFCA convention. You got to go to the combine, if we're going to have a combine, because that's really where we do a lot of our networking and meeting new people. So I think that's a must do if you're getting into the sports agent business, besides following the rules, which there's a lot of them. So sometimes people forget there's state laws, there's college rules, there's the NCAA rules, and the NFL rules. So you got to make sure you're following the rules and doing things right. So that's really what my advice is.
I think, to piggyback on what Jill just said, I would have a very similar advice when it comes to working for a club. I mean, I would start with being bold and not wait for someone that looked like you to try to attempt to apply for a job or get a job. But I think networking is also a key part of being able to get those jobs, because they're rarely posted. I mean, I've never seen a job, honestly, in on the football side that's posted where there's a traditional application process. So building your network becomes super critical. And I would absolutely agree with the mentor advice as well. This is huge. And I mean, you need a mentor when you start, throughout your career. I mean, I think you can benefit from a mentor your entire career, as a matter of fact. So just be bold, build your network, and keep pushing.
So I'll just say, as like not an opposing point, but while 100% your network is really important, I found that the strength of my resume was also critical. I actually got my job with the Saints and the Pelicans out of college without having a single connection. They hired me purely on my resume and my interview, because, you know, I had TV stations in Miami and LA on my resume. I had the USC athletic department on my resume. I had the NBC Olympics coverage on my resume. So if you're serious about working in sports, you need to get started ASAP, and each experience that you accumulate will, you know, put you on a position to get like more of a blue chip logo on your resume, if you will. And that, I mean, I get the sense that people take me seriously, like more seriously, just seeing who I've worked with, which is crazy. But like, name recognition matters a lot in sports in terms of a resume.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Jen, you got to run. I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. It was great having you and your perspective on tonight. We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Grace, I know for you, it's like, I feel the same way. Once I started working with the Giants, the Raiders, the Niners, started doing that, more and more people jumped on and started, saying, oh, maybe he knows what he's talking about, and this and that in the sporting world. And then my longevity of now having 18 years in, the people look at it and they think that way. So I understand what you're saying there. And I really appreciate everybody on the panel tonight. Catherine, I know it's late back there, but you got on and helped us out. And again, Grace and Jill, because this is something that means something to me. Like I said, I work with Amy and I've worked with females all the way through. And Catherine, we'd always sit together at the CFL stuff and whatever. I think it's just near and dear to my heart because I was raised with my mother and my two sisters, and I never wanted to see them struggle because of sexism or something. So to bring this panel on to just talk about football, sports in general, and have you guys on, you're all welcome back anytime. Obviously, just let me know when you're available, and we'll have you on again to talk ball, because this was a great conversation for me. I can tell you that.
Well, great. Thanks for having us, Dave.
Appreciate you coming on, Jill.
Thank you so much.
Yep, and I thank you all so much. Through technical difficulties here, I see all your faces moving now, which is great to see. Thank you all so much for coming on. I know me and David are going to talk about this while we're getting off here. It was great perspective, and I truly appreciate you all sharing your backgrounds and your stories with us.
Thanks for bringing us together.
Have a good night, y'all.
All right, have
Thanks.
a great one.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.
So that was a fun panel, huh, Ryan?
That was. Everybody's face was frozen, unfortunately, for me on Zoom, but I heard every single word. It was, I mean, honestly, man, like there's so much to dissect with that conversation that they just laid on us, because it's not just, sporting world, because like that's why we're here, right? We love sports, we love football. That's why we're talking ball. But just the perspective, because like we talk about empathy all the time, right, David? But like for us, we'll never truly know what it's like to be a woman working in sports, right? How difficult on a day-to-day, just perspective it is to survive. And then not only to survive, because all these women are so incredibly successful in each of their fields, that it's honestly just breathtaking hearing some of their stories and what they've had to endure and how they have maintained the success that they have through what is a difficult field to get into unfortunately for the gender that they are.
Well, and one theme that I took away from tonight is mentorship and connections, right? Being open to and inclusion. Those three things really rang home for me tonight. Was even from Jill, how she said she grew up as a coach's son or coach's daughter, so she was always on the field, always around it, and then she moved into marrying a coach, so she always had this access, that other people maybe didn't have in the industry. But she then took it, and now she's created a mentorship group where young women and men can go and they interact together in the group, and she mentors them through this process of becoming an agent and being able to represent themselves if they're a player and stuff. And you hear that she's such a diverse agent and sports attorney. I mean, she works from the UFC to Olympic athletes to personnels to I think one of her clients is an AD of a really big university. So the wording of the contracts are all unique and everything for her throughout all these different twists and turns. And she's been able to navigate that now since 1987. Which to me was just that's why when people ask me if I know a good agent, I'm like, yeah, Jill Baxter. It's a no-brainer. She's right there, and she's in LA, and she's just a great person and a wonderful individual. And then you see the younger members of the panel tonight, like Grace and Catherine, and Catherine, she's from already grown into a personnel person because she's been assistant general manager of a CFL team, a director at an XFL team. She's a coordinator now at an NFL team, and I believe she's like 32. So, I mean, it's, the world's at her fingertips. She's just going to grow into it, and she's a very smart and incredible brain on her shoulders, because I sit with her all the time and we talk personnel. Her and I go back and forth on stuff. And I mean, I'm telling you, she's as sharp as they come. And then how much Grace has meant to me in my industry. She's a partner of Maverick Sports Consulting. She helps our media. She helps our social media. She's taught me a lot about what she was saying, marketing, not just social media, but all of it. So she's really brought it. And then to have Jennifer Lee Chan on, I mean, a woman that's in the Bay Area, and she's one of these, pillars of sports in the Bay Area. So she's just, this woman who, you heard, she was a pro wrestler. She's doing all sorts of fun stuff, but her focus was building the relationships, the inroads with the players, the coaches, in order to develop this career, which she wanted, which was to sit and talk sports. And then out of her own mouth, she's like, women have to do it better, do it harder, work harder to get there, because they're women, and you have to prove to them that sports and stuff. Whereas guys like us, we can go sit on a bar stool and people would believe we know sports. They don't do the same thing with them. And so to hear inclusion for her and her talk about, just make sure, like, if the boys are going out to beers, include the women. If the boys are going out to dinner, include the women. If the boys are going to step in the office and have a private conversation, include the women. Just don't exclude them. Make sure we're including them in all the conversations and everything we're doing. So I really appreciate them. And again, obviously they're going to get some Mav care packages. And I hope they all take me up on the invitation to come back on, because that was a real treat for me tonight to hear all their perspectives on this.
And I know, David, you talked about, just where they've been to where they've gotten and how it's been difficult on the path. I'm curious, though, for your experience being a person that was in, those locker rooms, in the front office positions, everything that you did over the years, seeing women, surely but slowly starting to get more and more opportunities. What has it been like, just from your perspective in the sports industry and being in the NFL and CFL, that specifically, what has it been like to see those opportunities become more and more prevalent and hopefully, obviously, keep continuing here?
When I was at the New York Giants and it was my second year as an intern, Coughlin was the head coach. We actually had a female intern at camp that year for scouting, and she wanted to learn how to scout. And since it was her first year there, my second year there, Gettleman had me show her around, show her where to stand, where not to stand, and all that stuff. And I got to be really good friends with her, and it was really fun to see that somebody who I've grown up not having a strong interest in the sport, then to come across somebody like her, and she had such a passion for the game, and she loved watching the game and breaking film down and doing all the BS work, even timing kickers that I got frustrated on. She was like, "Oh, this is cool. We're timing kickers." And I'm like, "Oh, it sucked. We're timing kickers." But, she was being passionate about it and everything. And seeing women growing into new roles that they, like you heard Catherine say, they weren't traditionally opened up to them. Those paths weren't there. They were only mainly on the business side. They weren't allowed on the football side, right? That's not where they were allowed. To see them open up now, I think it's really cool. And the women I do run into on the football side, like Catherine and others, they have a passion for football, which, again, you just don't find in just every human being. Because to do it, you're not going to get famous being a personnel person. I mean, unless you become the GM, nobody knows who you are. You really are working behind the scenes and in the dark, and you just do what you do. And it's a thankless job, because you'll screw up a pick or you'll screw up a recommendation. And that's the one they'll want to talk about. They won't talk about the one that you hit, or the 4 or 5 that you hit on, right? So, you have to have thick skin to do it. And to see these women have the passion and drive and tenacity to want to do it, that's motivating to people like me that have been in it for 20 years or almost 20 years. It's like, wow, to see these next generation of scouts coming up, and they're females and men, and they're working together to climb the ladder. It's really a special time in sports for me. Looking through my 18 years, this is a special time in sports to see this all happening right now.
Absolutely. And again, big thank yous to Jennifer Lee Chan from the 49ers Insiders, Sports Bay Area, out there doing amazing things. Catherine Raîche for the Philadelphia Eagles. Grace DeWitt from Douglas Digital, works with David specifically, as he's talked about a little bit. And Jill McBride Baxter. Incredible panel. We hope you all got a lot out of that. Before we move on to our next segment, we want you all to know that we appreciate you for tuning in to Mavs Sports Take tonight. Are you looking for a way to promote your company? If so, you would like to learn more about, if you would like to learn more about partnering with Mavs Sports Take, contact us at mavsportsconsulting.com. We have opened up our partnerships for you to take advantage of. Mavs Sports Take is reaching nearly 500 listeners each episode. Drop us an email at mavericksportsconsulting.com, and we will work to tailor a custom partnership package for you. Moving in to the NFL, college football news, and a little bit into some pick'ems for this week that we love to do. Got to start off with, of course, the Houston Texans firing head coach and active general manager. I don't know what his exact title is as far as being general manager, but Bill O'Brien is out in Houston after, I believe, 6 years, 7 years. I don't know. But he honestly, he gets, you know, a lot of negativity, but I think he made the playoffs like 5 out of 6 years or 6 out of 7 years. He was a very successful coach for what it's worth. Now, the general manager part of the conversation, that's a little bit of a different topic. But, David, we're talking about Bill O'Brien being fired after only